71% of people said that they would be interested in staying in a more environmentally vacation rental in the year ahead. And even 72% or 3% said that if they had a comparison between two properties and one was environmentally friendly and one wasn't, and in all of the reasons they were the same, they would choose the environmentally sustainable property. So if you want to make a difference, if you want to differentiate yourself from your competitors, depending on where you are, it depends on the situation and the circumstances, of course, but putting an eco element to your property, which I think you will then get addicted to and do more, is a great way of differentiating yourself from your competitors.
This is episode number 85 of the Short-Term Rental Success Stories podcast. Are you an investor that's looking to have your home professionally managed? Go to cohostit.com for more information. Welcome back to Short-Term Rental Success Stories. I'm your host, Julian Sage. This is a show where I talk to hosts about their journeys in starting and growing their short-term rental business. My goal is that you'll be able to walk away with practical information that'll help you become a better host and learn how to scale your business. Like any exceptional host, we all strive for 5-star reviews, so please go on over to iTunes and let us know what you enjoy, as it really helps support the show. If you haven't done so already, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation, to connect with the community. Hey, what is going on, Host Nation? I'm super excited to be back again with you this week. Wanted to highlight a couple of reviews that came in. We have 99 reviews on iTunes right now, so please, if you haven't done so, I would really appreciate if you could go ahead and leave us a review. Let us reach over 100. It's crazy to think that just a little over a year and a half ago, we were just starting this podcast, and now we are just about to reach 100 reviews, and we have tens of thousands of people that listen to us each month. So this is just so amazing. So if you do find value from the show, please go ahead, please leave a review, as it does let me know that you are enjoying this content. Couple of reviews that came in. We have from Cultured Crane. They left 5 stars saying, these episodes are all full of different and valuable information. Julian asks the perfect questions and covers a dynamic range of topics related to short-term rentals. I can't wait to start my Airbnb business and apply the knowledge that I've learned here. Thank you so much, Cultured Crane. Also have another review come in on our second podcast, Vacation Rental Machine. Vacation Rental Machine, for those of you that don't know and haven't been listening, that show is where we get a lot more technical. We go into the weeds on particular aspects of managing a short-term rental business. So if you haven't subscribed to that podcast yet, definitely recommend you do that. And please go ahead and leave us a review. We have 52 reviews on there. I would love to be able to get some more reviews onto that show. Let me know what are the things that you enjoy. What are the things that you maybe don't want to do? If you want to send me a message, you can also do that as well. But we got a really nice review coming from Arthur Wise. It's 5 stars, and he says, 10 out of 10. I'm listening to this podcast every morning on my way to work. I'm really curious as to who's going back and listening to the now over 200 episodes that we've done in the past year and a half between Short-Term Rental Success Stories and Vacation Rental Machine. So if you have been enjoying the show, if you have gotten anything from the show, please, again, go on iTunes, leave a review. It really lets me know that you are enjoying this content. Today I had the special honor of speaking with Bob Garner, co-owner of Casal the Fichi, an eco-friendly restored 6-unit farmhouse that overlooks the rolling hills of Marche in Italy. In this episode, Bob shares his experience of quitting the corporate rat race with his partner to pursue their dream of starting a traditional B&B in the countryside. Bob shares how he found this property, the process of restoring a farmhouse, how he's made environmental consciousness and sustainability a key value in the property and guest experience, as well as some really cool things, such as some really cool ways that he's been able to drive up his direct bookings and get some really nice media exposure by working with publicists, talking about the unique aspects of their business, of their lifestyle, and what they're offering. So this is a really great episode. And if you like my show notes for this episode, go to shorttermsage.com/STR85. Or if you like my show notes sent directly to your inbox every week, then go to shorttermsage.com/show notes. With all that being said, on to this week's conversation. Hey, welcome back, Host Nation, to another episode of Short-Term Rental Success Stories. In this episode, I have the special honor of speaking with Bob Garner. Bob, if you please wouldn't mind introducing yourself to the Host Nation, let them know who you are and what inspired you to get into short-term rentals.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for inviting me, Julian. It's great to be here. Yeah, my name's Bob Garner, and along with my partner, Ian, we run some self-contained holiday rentals in Marche, Italy. And, I just wanted to do something different and make a difference in terms of my work-life balance. And so that's why we came to do what we did after what we were doing previously in London.
So, yeah, if you wouldn't mind taking us back to the beginning, like what were you doing and how did you fall into this, vacation rental world?
Yeah, sure. So my partner and I were living in London. We both worked in the corporate world and we had great jobs. They pay you a lot of money and they work you really hard. Lots of people will know that experience. And some of it's great and some of it's not so good. And to be honest, we got to the point in our lives where we were taking holidays, lots of holidays around the world to compensate for the stressful work life that we had. And we came to the conclusion that we said, well, like all we're doing is spending a lot of money that we've earned to try and make ourselves feel better for the time off away from these, stressful jobs. Why don't we think more holistically about our work-life balance and what we want to do with our lives? You want to get one chance at this, don't you? So we thought, well, what do we want to do? And to be honest, it took us quite a long time to make a decision because we kept coming up with these crazy ideas. I think a lot of your listeners will have gone through this cycle where you think, oh, well, maybe I could do this or maybe I could do that and I could reinvent myself in some crazy way. And so we'd go through all these scenarios of, could we run a pub or could we, open up a different type of property? And each one had its drawbacks and we decided that a lot of them didn't work. And then ultimately we started to come to the conclusion that a short-term rental would work really well for us. We're both planners. I was in human resources and my partner was in project management. So we're very good at thinking things through and planning and looking at the pros and cons and doing the SWOT analysis and really, having a deep think into what would work and what wouldn't work. But then I suppose what really happened at the end of the day is we had a friend who was working and living, a British friend in Rome, living in Rome, and we used to visit her often. And I was visiting one time and she said, hey, well, I'm going away for the weekend to a place called Marche, which I'd never heard of. And she said, do you want to tag along? So I went along with her and we ended up in this region, which I'd never heard from before. And it's a beautiful area in central Italy. For those of your listeners who don't know, it's very near Umbria and Tuscany, but it's on the Adriatic coast opposite Croatia, sort of halfway down Italy. Not a very well-known area, not as touristic as many of the other places that you'll have heard about. And I sort of fell in love with the area and the place. And I went home to Ian and said, hey, I think, we've now found a location and we'd had an idea of how we wanted to do it. Let's put those things together and create a business which will allow us to have a different lifestyle, to give ourselves balance and give us a new challenge at that point to do something that we'd never done before. Neither of us had any experience in the hosting industry. But we had a lot of transferable skills from our different jobs over the years. And we thought, let's give it a go. And that was the beginning of Casal di Fichi, coming out to find a property, an abandoned farmhouse, and the whole process of converting it into what is now a successful business that's been running for some 14 years.
Wow, a lot to unpack there, and thank you for sharing your story. I think a lot of people that listen to the show, everybody's got their own stories as to why they get into short-term rentals. But did you feel that your motivation, like a lot of our listeners are very business oriented, or they're trying to maybe escape the rat race, or they're they're just trying to save some money. They have a vacation rental that they purchase for themselves, but then they realize that maybe they could manage it better themselves. In your case, do you feel that yours getting into the short-term rental space it almost sounds like it was more of a spiritual journey for you, if anything?
Partially, yeah. I mean, we had a lot of friends all around the world, and they were doing some different things from what they'd been doing before, having some adventures, starting new challenges. And, we were saying, well, why don't we do that? We've got no responsibilities. We've got no kids. We can go off and do what we want to do. We had planned it somewhat in terms of when we decided that we wanted to do something, we then took the decision to get our finances in order. And the first thing we did was we started throwing every spare pound that we had into paying off our mortgage. And within 3 years, we'd paid off our mortgage because we were putting a lot of money in there. Once you have cleared your debts and you don't owe anybody anything, it clears your mind. It allows you to focus and think about what you want to do because you've got an asset there, a very small London property, but an expensive property. And it gives you the chance to think, well, I don't owe anybody anything. I can take that asset, I can sell it, and I can use that money to do something. And we were really looking, as well as wanting to make a difference in terms of the balance of our lives, and not it just be all full on work and then full on play. We wanted more of a balance that would give us some equilibrium. But we also wanted a challenge. We wanted to do some new things. We wanted to test our ability to set up a business from scratch, to develop an abandoned farmhouse and turn it into luxury apartments. And so it was part adventure, it was part craziness, but there was a lot of planning that had gone into it. So it wasn't something we just did, on the spur of the moment. We took a lot of time to think about it. But at the end of the day, there's only so much thinking you've got to do. You've also got to go with your heart as well as with your head. And sometimes you just have to take the leap and jump into these things and take a chance. And you can plan and plan and plan, but at the end of the day, at some point, you've got to jump off that diving board. And I think that's what most people would understand and have probably had that experience too.
It's almost, it's one of my dreams or my ideals is like going back to Japan, having like a little farm cabin, the traditional old style, Japanese homes with the tatami mats and the sliding doors. And, so there's always that ideal, but it's like you actually went out there and you moved to the country, you found that abandoned farmhouse and you built up this life for you. That takes a lot of courage. And probably maybe a lot of planning. Like, what were some of the challenges that you faced getting up to that point where it's like, actually making the move?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we did is we drew up a plan of what we wanted and what we didn't want. Because basically we were moving to Italy, obviously a different culture, a different language, a different attitude to business from the English way. We were moving into a business that we didn't know that much about, so we needed to do that research. But then we were also one of the ideas that we wanted is we didn't want to just buy a business off the shelf, a completed property. We wanted the venture of renovating a property from scratch. The Casal di Fichi had been empty for 35 years. It was a derelict old property. The whole structure had to be completely redone, everything from scratch. It was sitting in a muddy field. All the gardens had to be created. The pool had to be put in. Everything had to be done from scratch. So I guess we came up with a plan in the looking for the property about what we wanted. It had to meet certain criteria, and we weren't going to go and look at properties that didn't meet that criteria. And from memory, some of them were things like it had to be within 1 hour of the airport. It had to be within walking distance of a village or a town. It had to be away from a road or an eyesore, and it had to be in a pretty location with a beautiful view, because we knew that we had to find a property that also had a certain size that we could carve out a number of units to make enough money to live off. And so these were the criteria that we judged every property that we saw by, which made it much easier in determining what we really wanted. And we were quite strict about that because it had to succeed as a business. And if we were to compromise on some of those elements, and there were a couple more, we were going to put at risk the viability of the business. So we were thinking those things through, and then working out looking at it again through the eyes of the potential guest 2 years down the line. What would they see? What would they want? What would they be interested in? And one of the things that we concluded, and I guess probably a lot of your listeners have these same emotions and feelings, we've stayed in lots of places before, both in this country, but in other countries around the world. A lot of self-contained apartments, hotels, B&Bs, etc. And you soon start to realize what works, what's really good, both in terms of the structure, but in terms of the service, in terms of the hosting, and what doesn't work, and when those things fall down. And some of them might be really small things, like a very badly equipped kitchen with no lighting and, really grubby surfaces or equipment or something like that, or a TV on a wall that's this big. And literally, in some places in Italy, this is what they still have. It's totally crazy. So you start to build up some things about what will work in your business, and that's what we then used as a checklist to decide how we were going to create Casal di Fichi. And we tried to stick as close as we could to that list as we went along.
I mean, was this something, was it like just like a passion project where it's just like, hey, we can put as much money as we want and we can charge whatever we want and it'll be nice? Or did you say like, hey, I need to hit these certain numbers. We need to spend this much money. And if we don't, then we're going to be having to live off of the farm, probably a lot harder.
Yeah. And we'd both been working for 20 years and we both had regular incomes where the salary comes into the bank account every month and you live to that income. You may save some, but you know the money's coming in and you can budget accordingly. When we jumped off the diving board, so to speak, and moved here, having sold our property in London, we had a finite amount of money to spend. And when that money was gone. There was no income coming in. We're not wealthy people. We had no other significant resources to call upon. So that does really focus the mind. And as the project was continuing, and some of the costs are really substantial when you're renovating a property. It's not really in Italy the purchasing of the property, and abandoned property doesn't cost so very much. But the renovation costs are really high. And if you don't keep a really tight handle on those, then it's quite easy. The budget can run away with you and you can end up with no money left and the project not completed. So we were really conscious of that. And it is quite stressful, in the first year as the project is developing and you're renovating the property and starting to think about marketing and putting all your ducks in a row, so to speak. There is that sense of you can see the bank balance going down and down and down, and you're trying to get the business to be ready before you hit rock bottom so you can start earning some income. So we were really conscious of that. And that was one of the stressful aspects of renovating a property, because as anybody will know who's renovated, there's only so much planning you can do and budgeting you can do. Some things will crop up that you hadn't expected. Some issues will come out at you and you have to take them on the chin, and there's not a lot you can do about them, particularly in Italy, when we're working in a different language, in a different culture, in a different way of doing things. In your own culture and in your own country, you have a sense of what works and what doesn't work and what the cost of this would be and how this would work. And if it went wrong, who you could speak to about A or B or C. In a culture that we were in, when we didn't know anybody around us, we didn't know anybody who'd done what we had done. It was, in the very early days of the internet, so there wasn't as much opportunity to do research as obviously now one could. And so there wasn't the same networks and the same forums and the same resources that we could call upon. We sort of had to really fall back on our own experiences, our own work experience and what we'd learned and what we thought would work. And we made mistakes. I mean, it did not go perfectly by any means whatsoever. And looking back, that was part of the fun of it. But at the time, it sort of feels stressful and it feels somewhat out of your control. And it's like sand slipping through your fingers. So it's partly exhilarating and partly really, really stressful. But, we look back on it with fond memories, and it was a great experience, that initial development of the project.
How close were you to hitting that bottom that you said, and what were some of the like, oh crap moments that you're just like, are we going to be able to make it out of this?
Yeah, I think as I was saying, some of those things are things like when the builder finds something structurally unexpected in the property and says, well, now we have to do an extra level of foundations that we didn't expect to do because we didn't know what we were going to find until we dig up. We're talking about a 100-year-old building, abandoned for 35 years, basically built on mud with no foundations, the walls bowing out, no doors and windows, the roof shot to pieces. There's only so much that you can plan for some of those things. And when those things crop up and you go, okay, all right, well, we've got to spend another 20,000 on this, something that needed to be done and had to be done. But when you finish the property, you don't see anything for it. It's just money that's gone into building up the structure and making it as safe as it needs to be. So yeah, we got really close to that bottom line. And I guess it may have been arrogance, and it might have been misplaced, but we did have the conclusion that if necessary, one of us, probably me, would go back and pick up work in London and just continue to work so that we could finance the end of the project. So we had a backstop that we could fall back on. Whether I would have been able to get back and do the work and find the work is another matter, but that was in the back of our minds. That is what we would do if push came to shove. But luckily, we didn't quite get to that.
So you moved there in 2005. 2007 is when the building was complete and you could start the operations?
Yeah. We did do a soft launch in 2006. So what we did in 2005, after we'd bought the property, we've got lots of olive trees on the plot. So we flew over. I mean, we're only a couple of hours from London by flight, of course. We flew over for the weekend and picked our olives, which you do in the October, November time, around now. In fact, we just did it last week here. And we didn't really know what we were doing. And we checked what other people were doing. And we spent 2 days picking olives. And then we took them to the olive press, which is in the village. And you book a slot, you take your olives in, and we had a small amount, maybe 100 kilos, which is very little, really. And we pressed our olives, and it's an amazing, wonderful experience. So much fun in a way, because there was a guy behind us in the queue. He was next in line after us, and he had a similar amount of olives. And he said to us, in Italian, of course, that if we could just combine our 2 olives, it would save him some time, and we would then split the oil at the end. And I was saying to him in my really, really, really bad Italian at that point, well, no, we didn't want to do that, that we were olive oil virgins. This was our first time at doing this. And we wanted to go home with our own olive oil from our own trees. And he just thought we were crazy, because to them it's just pressing olives, and he'd been doing it for 40 years and it was nothing to him. But to us, it was a big moment. It was a special time, and we wanted that olive oil, because then we took that olive oil back. And just before we left the UK, we went on a tour of all of our friends in the UK for a month, each night staying with a different friend. And we gave them each a small bottle of our olive oil with a personalized label with their name on and the date and a little message. And we stayed on floors and we slept in spare bedrooms and whatever, and just spent a month going around saying goodbye to all our friends. And then we said to them, what we'd like to do is have a soft launch the following year. And we'd love you to come out and just come and stay for free and give us some advice about what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, what's not fixed yet, what we should be doing more of or less of, etc. And come out and just help us. And so quite a few of them did and come out and stayed. And in fact, I remember some of the times we weren't even ready for some of them. So I remember one time we did the apartments in rotation. So as we finished one, we'd move on to the next one. So the final fittings of it, the sort of final look of it, sometimes was somewhat delayed. So some were done and some weren't done. And some of our friends arrived and we said, yeah, everything's done. All you need to do is make your bed. We haven't had a chance to do that. And they said, yeah, no problem. Just, we'll go and sort that out. And what we meant was the bed was in pieces on the floor and they had to put it together, not just put some sheets on it. So, there were things like that weren't quite finished, but people didn't mind. And in fact, in the very early stages, when some people came very early on, we still didn't have a light switch controlling every apartment. So there was one switch that controlled the whole house. So it was a bit like the Waltons, like good night, John Boy and good night Mary. Everyone had to go to bed at a certain time, and the switch went off and their lights went out until the morning, because there was still only one switch controlling the whole house. So we had those sort of fun things, getting friends to help us think about how the business could be. And we trusted their insight and we trusted their experience. And that's really, really valuable, I think, because sometimes you can get so close to the business and so close to the subject, you don't see the wood for the trees. And it's great to have that perspective, a friend who'll really tell you what you want to hear, what you need to hear, I beg you, rather than what you want to hear. And that's really important. And we don't want them to turn around and say, oh, yeah, it's all wonderful, it's fantastic. We need them to tell us, this is not going to work. You need to change this, fix that, look at that. Those are the valuable pieces of feedback that we really treasured and took on board and tried to incorporate all of them into the business. So we did have quite a bit of time, that first 18 months to get the business up and running and get it gelled and working before we were really going out to complete strangers, so to speak.
So you did this launch. You had people review your property. I mean, that sounds like it was a really fun experience. But after that, did it blow up? Was it just like, hey, all this business, everything's perfect, it's we're going to be doing well, or was there some obstacles along with that?
Yeah, of course, because of course you remember we're talking like 13 years ago. There wasn't an Airbnb. VRBO or Home Away was perhaps just starting then. There wasn't the same platforms in any way built in the same way as we now have. So we started off by reaching out to various agencies who we knew were promoting Italy, and we got listed up with a couple. And we thought we'll just take whatever business we can get and we'll pay whatever commission we need to pay till we can build up a business that's successful and that we don't need to rely on anymore. And I remember one small business, and they were charging us 25% commission on every booking, which is a lot of money. But we were grateful to get bookings, because 75% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So really important to just get some people in, get bums on seats and into beds, get to know them, get to trial out how we're doing things, and then get to make connections with those people and start to build up what's turned out to be a great repeat business for us, which is the core part of our business now. But no, certainly in the early days, we relied on those OTAs, the smaller ones. But we also said to all our friends then, this is after the soft launch, please come and stay. We'll give you a great mates rate, but we need to build up some business. So a lot of them came out in that first year or second year, and they had a holiday. It was obviously finished to them, and we got some income. So it was brilliant to have that, little leg up help from our friends. And then as we got more comfortable, we could start to develop how we would find our business. And one of the things that we picked on early was press coverage. And we've had a lot of press coverage for our business, thankfully. But we got a couple of really nice pieces in the national press in the UK in the early days. And in the early days, almost 100% of our business was coming from the UK, because it was a market that we understood and we knew. So we thought, let's target that market because it's much easier for us. Obviously now we get a lot of Americans and North Europeans, but in the early days it was all English. So when we got some great national press, then that actually brought in some good business for us and helped us develop the style that we now have, which is really about hosting people in person, on site, and trying to give them the best holiday they've ever had, so that they'll come back.
I mean, there's probably a lot of other B&Bs, vacation rentals that have started up that, I'm sure that they would love to get that type of national press. How were you able to court these publications and have them, basically promote your business? And how reliant were you on that business, you said all of your business primarily was coming from the UK. So if you didn't set up those relationships with the press, then your place would have been empty.
Yeah, I mean, we did obviously start to establish other relationships as well. So we established a relationship with TripAdvisor very early on. Though I have to say, I'd never heard of them. And a guest who taught tourism at a university in the UK said, "Hey, you should get onto TripAdvisor." And I said, in my naivety, this is 13, 14 years ago, what's TripAdvisor? I'd never heard of it. And she set us up on TripAdvisor, and she gave us our first review. And that was a great way to start that business off. Now we don't get bookings through TripAdvisor, though we're still listed on them because of our reviews. I'm not sure how many people do use TripAdvisor anymore. But in the early days, they were a great source of guests, a great source of clients, and we used them and relied on them in the early days. But now we've moved off the OTAs almost completely. We do have just a little bit on the shoulders that we use, but most of it we're just taking from our repeats and our online bookings and our recommendations through our website, etc. So, but that takes time to build up. And to answer your question, with the media, it's really just about keep hammering away, finding a new angle, writing a press release, sending it out to as many journalists that you think would be interested. And all the time you hear nothing comes back. But I think with press, you just have to keep plugging away. And over the years, that's been one of our mantras, is just keep plugging away at the press, because sometimes you'll get a piece, mainly in the nationals, but not always. Sometimes in smaller magazines or even local press, and you'll get a dozen bookings off the back of it. And it's cost you nothing. All it's cost you is a little bit of your time, your brain power, writing a press release, sending it out, possibly even chasing it with a phone call to the journalists themselves, if you can get hold of their details. So it's a very, very, very low cost way of getting some business. And once you start to generate some press coverage, sometimes, hope there are no journalists listening, but some journalists can be really, really lazy, and they will look for where other press has been happening in that area. And if they can find something quickly without having to do a lot of research, then they will. And so sometimes we will get some press because we've had some press, and a journalist will get in touch and go, "Oh, I hear you've done that," or "This happened," or "You're big on the eco stuff," or whatever it would be. Let's chat. So, of course, it builds. It's like a virtuous circle. Once you've got some press, sometimes you can get some more, but it isn't easy. And sometimes you get a lot of knockbacks, so it can be a bit dispiriting. But when it works well, it's a wonderful feeling. You open up the newspaper and you see this 2-page spread all about you and your business and what you've done. And of course, we have a little bit of a story to tell. 2 gay guys coming to live in rural Italy in a little Catholic village, setting up a business, developing a farmhouse. You might have seen that we're running in the UK for a long time a lot of programs about escape to the country, buy an old place and renovate it. It's really big TV in the UK, or it used to be, possibly in America too. So we know it's a dream that many people have, because we hear it from our guests all the time, as I'll go on to tell you. And so it's also a good story in the media sometimes. And so in the early days, we did get some press off the back of that. We're really thankful for it. It's been great.
So you were writing your own basically press stories, and they would basically just take it and then modify it, tweak it a little bit, and then send it out. So really, you're kind of like a writer for your own business.
Yeah. I think we're both pretty good with words and good at crafting a story and targeting it to the right people. There is a certain format that you can learn about writing press releases. There are some do's and don'ts that are really important, because if you want a journalist to take it seriously, they're getting hundreds every day from so many sources. So you have got to follow the format. You've got to follow the rules. And there are certain things you do and certain things you don't do. And you've got to learn that. And so you've even got a chance of getting your foot in the door. Just sending out some crazy stuff with lots of attachments and 3 pages long, they're not even going to even look at it. You've got to be really concise. You've got to give them a great heading. You've got to give them a unusual story. You've got to give them a good strap line. You've got to give them a bit of a wow and something that they can inspire them and think that they can run with this without too much work. Because if they can do that, then that makes their life so much easier. So it's something you can learn. It's not rocket science. I'm not some great Einstein. It's something that anybody can learn. But I think it is important, if you're going to do it, is to follow the rules, because it makes it much easier to get your foot in the door and get them to open your email and read what you've got to say.
Hey, this is Julian, and I wanted to be able to give you our newest book, Airbnb Secrets Revealed: How to Build a Fortune on Airbnb Without Owning Property. In this book, we talk about the concepts of rental arbitrage investing, as well as co-hosting, and how you can build a business leveraging other people's properties. This book is perfect for the new short-term rental investor, and it's something that I wish that I had when I first started, as it would have saved me a lot of trouble and helped me to understand how to be able to leverage the power of short-term rental investing in your own real estate portfolio. If you'd like to get our newest book completely for free, go to shorttermsage.com/free book. Now, back to the show. And, being able to compile this story is definitely important, but you also have to have kind of a unique story. And like you said, you had a very original. There was a lot of people dreaming of that. One aspect of that, though, is also the eco-friendly. Do you mind talking about what does it mean for you to be eco-friendly and for people that are interested in maybe escaping the corporate rat race to do maybe something similar? What does eco-friendly mean?
Yeah. Okay. So from the beginning, we knew that we wanted to make our business as environmentally sustainable as we could. To be a little bit heavy for a moment, everybody understands what the world is going through, that we need to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, that we have to cut our emissions by 50% by 2030. And even more so in some of the developed countries like the UK and the US, where our individual carbon footprints are way, way, way above a lot of other people around the world. So there's a lot of things that individuals, businesses, governments, cities need to do, and it isn't going to be solved by waiting for a dictate from above, from a legislator or regulator say we need to do this or we need to do that. We've always believed it's the responsibility of all of us to take some simple steps to move down the line to have a lighter, lower footprint on the world. And it's not for me to preach to other people about what they should do, but I do genuinely believe that everybody has an opportunity to take some small steps. And that's why I write about this subject. I blog about this subject. I talk about it all the time because it's something that I'm passionate about. So back to Casal di Fichi, it was something that we always wanted to do. And so we built sustainability into the business. We baked it into what we do and why we do it. And anybody who has any contact with our business, whether it's online, through our website, through our social media, through visiting with us, through talking with us, whether it's the awards we've won or the press that we've garnered, every bit of it, all the way through, it's like a piece of rock. It says environmental sustainability all the way through. So everything you touch at every point has a story about that, because we believe it's important and we need to be responsible as a business. And we think that's also good business, which I'd like to go on and talk about. So we started off by the structure of the property. We didn't have air conditioning. We've got an old farmhouse with very thick walls, so we didn't feel the need for air conditioning, because obviously air conditioning is particularly bad for the environment. We designed all the bedrooms to be on the north side of the building, on the cool side of the building, because it's the bedrooms that you want to be the coolest in the summer. We have hot summers here. We put 17 Velux windows, the roof windows, up in the roof. And when they're open, the air is sucked up through the roof and out. So we try to create air flows throughout the building so that air is moving and fresh air is coming in and stale air or hot air is moving out. And then we did some other initiatives around the structure of the building, about how the rooms were designed, about what infrastructure we would install in the building, and then even things like the energy that we take that has to be green energy, so it's not come from carbon, it's come from solar, and things like the vegetable garden, which our guests can use, is an organic vegetable garden, and we encourage them to use it and take those fresh vegetables straight back to their beautiful designer kitchen and make themselves a lovely meal. And now I can go on and on about all the initiatives that we've done, things like taking plastic out of the business, things like putting in an ozone filter on the pool rather than a chlorine pool. I'm not saying that we did everything on day one, because we didn't know about some of these things. We were learning back in the early days. We just knew that we wanted to try and set it up as much as we could. And when you start this, I've said this many, many times, when you start on the environmental roadmap, as I call it, it's like an addiction. It really is like an addiction. You do something, it works really well, it functions, it's effective, it does its job, whatever this job might be, and we can talk about the individual aspects. You talk about that to your guests in a simple but direct way, not in any preachy way, but you just let them know that by staying at your property, they've made a decision, whether they knew it at the time or not, to support an ecological business. And so they've had a lower footprint for their vacation, which of course now is becoming a big thing that people are talking about. So they go home and they talk to their friends about it and their family. They send those people, they write a lovely review. That comes back to give you more business. It gives you a better return on your investment. And it's a virtuous circle, because as you take one step, you get some positive feedback, you get a lovely review, and then you take another step. And it really is very addictive. And over the years, we've taken many, 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 many steps, and we still are taking steps. We're still learning, we're not the experts. But each time you take one, you get something really nice coming back. Like last year, we won the Shortsea Eco Award, which we were really proud and privileged to win. And that also gives you some recognition that you've done something right in your business and that you've made a difference. And then, of course, the important thing is, as I always say to everybody, don't be shy about talking about it. There's nothing wrong with having a success, having an achievement, whatever it might be, and then talking about that achievement. Sending out a press release, putting something on a blog, writing something on social media, putting another aspect on your website that talks about these things. If you go to our website, we're not shy about talking about the awards we've won or the press we've had or the steps that we've taken. But we always talk about them that we've done it in partnership and with the support of our guests, because they've been the ones who've helped us do it, because they're the ones who've come back again and again and again. And an aspect of that has been the environmental sustainability. It's not been the only factor. I'm not claiming that it is. But we have a 60% return rate from our guests each year, which I think is quite high in the industry. And we know that those people are going to come back each year. And then on top of that, we get referrals and recommendations, and then the rest through our website. So we think we're doing some of the right things, but we are still learning, and it's a journey, it never ends. And this year ahead, we're looking to introduce some new stuff, which we're really excited about. And that's we'll be showcasing that in the new year. And it's another big step on our environmental journey. So it's exciting.
How can people, a lot of the listeners of the show, Bob, they might have multiple properties. Maybe they want to manage for other people. Maybe they have their own properties and they're trying to create a really nice experience for their guests across, multiple locations, you're living on site. I imagine you're able to take care and really, look after the property. I mean, this is your home, this is your life, but this is also your business. For hosts that are, managing multiple properties or managing for other people that want to be able, that do, believe, that do want to, become more of an eco-friendly business, what are some things that they can do, some easy things that they can start to implement across multiple properties or across other people's properties that they're managing for?
Absolutely. Yeah. You're absolutely right. We're on site. We see our guests every day. We talk to them every day. We sit down and have a drink with them. We host a pizza party once a week in our garden where they make pizza and we share and chat. Not this year because of COVID, but in normal years. And yeah, we have that advantage. For the majority of people who are more remote from their individual property or their portfolio of properties, it's more of a challenge, but it is possible. I would say take some simple steps, which I can explain in a moment, and then talk about them. And also then start to think. I wrote a piece recently for rented.com about why being green is good for business. It isn't an add-on that you do later because you think it's something that you need to do. It's important to try and build it into every aspect of your business. We're not interested in greenwashing. We're not interested in presenting the image of eco where eco doesn't exist. We want people to do it. I want everybody to do it. I'm here to encourage everybody to take a step and do it because it's the right thing to do for yourself and for your family and your community and the planet. But it's the right thing to do for your business because there is a market for this. Booking.com did some surveys last year, and 71% of people said that they would be interested in staying in a more environmentally vacation rental in the year ahead. And even 72% or 3% said that if they had a comparison between two properties and one was environmentally friendly and one wasn't, and in all of the reasons they were the same, they would choose the environmentally sustainable property. So if you want to make a difference, if you want to differentiate yourself from your competitors, depending on where you are, it depends on the situation and the circumstances, of course, but putting an eco element to your property, which I think you will then get addicted to and do more, is a great way of differentiating yourself from your competitors. And legislation will be coming down the line. There will be things that will start to happen that you will have to comply with. So to give an example, in certain countries, in certain states, in certain parts of the world, single-use plastic is being, legislated against. So you will have to take these steps sometime. So get ahead of the curve and take those steps now while you can. And when your competitors are not doing it, build up your green brand, build up your image so that you can capitalize on the market that's there. For the people who are reading about in the quality press all the time, how can I be more eco when I go on holiday? How can I find a great place to stay? What should I be looking for? Every week in the serious press, there's a piece about that. And our guests and the tourists around the world are reading those pieces. And they're starting to connect the dots between their impact of being a tourist and what will happen to the planet. 8% of global greenhouse gases are related to tourism. That is a huge number. So I think tourism, our industry, has a role to play, has a responsibility to make a change and do something different so that we can be responsible members of the community. But to come back to your point, to give some really simple steps that people could do, I'll give you three really easy ones, but there's 33 of them. So take three that will be easy to do, that won't cost you any money, and that you can then brand yourself as green. Three would be change your energy tariff to a green energy tariff, which is as simple as calling up your energy company and saying, you have a green tariff, I'd like to switch from the carbon tariff to the green tariff. Almost every energy company has it. If they don't have it, which is very rare, change companies. It's a simple email, a simple phone call, and it's usually cheaper to be on a green tariff. So you save some money and you're doing something great for the environment because your energy is being brought to you by solar or by wind or by wave, whatever, depending upon your area. So that's a great thing to do. Second thing to do is plant some trees. We have a really innovative planting scheme here where we work with our guests and local restaurants to finance tree planting. And we've planted a few hundred trees now, and we've saved something like 400,000 pounds of CO2 that those trees are negating from the atmosphere. Tree planting is really easy. If you can't do it on your site, do it through one of the schemes that you can find online. There are hundreds of them. Some are better than others, but you can, for a very low amount, plant some trees, and that is a great carbon sink, a great carbon offset, and you can then sell that and talk about that to your guests. People love trees. Nobody's going to hate you for planting trees. It's going to be a really easy thing to do. And then the third thing I would say that's super simple that will also save you money, if you haven't already done it, is change your light bulbs to LED. LED are the latest light bulb, as many people will know, but a lot of people are still using the old light bulbs, and legislation is changing, perhaps more in Europe, but possibly in America, I don't know, where you have to move to LED. Move to LED, they use a tiny fraction of the power of old style light bulbs. They last for a massive amount of time longer. So you put them in, they use less energy and they last a lot longer. And an average home, I think, in the US saves $300 a year by switching from the old style light bulb to an LED. So those three simple steps allow you to start to brand yourself as environmentally sustainable, and then go out and find one of the specialist OTAs. There are many out there whose clients are looking to stay in environmental properties. We use one called Airbnb, but there are many of them. And get yourself listed on those sites, because that's where people who are interested in the environment, who care about where they stay, are going to look, and you get an opportunity to attract a new aspect of your segment that you weren't attracting before, a whole new market that's opening up for you. And when those guests come to stay, they will give you some feedback, they will give you some ideas, and then you can take some more steps on your roadmap to being more environmentally sustainable. I've written and spoken a lot about that, and I would really be open to anybody who's interested to just contact me. I'm sure my contact details will be in the show notes. I'm happy to help them for free. I just want everybody to start to take some steps, and I guarantee you will not regret it. It will be great for your business, and it's great for the planet.
I love it, and just some of the stuff that you were sharing, just even though you might be in a city, you might be more in a metro area, just because you live in a metro area and you might not be able to plant trees, every stay you could set aside a certain amount of money and say every guest that stays, we contribute to planting trees to better help the environment. I like the ideas about the LED light bulb. That one's just super easy, contacting the energy. So those are really good. And you said that you have a lot more tips that are on your blog as well.
Yeah, if anybody wants to go to our website, they'll see several pages about our environment. The first page is all about what we've done, and there's a whole list there. They're not rocket science. Most of them are really, really easy. They're not difficult to do. It's just turning your mind to it and starting to think about what the eco guest is looking for. They're looking to avoid single-use plastic. They're looking for efficient energy. Many of them are now driving electric cars. So, we've put an electric car charger there so they can charge for free when they arrive. Again, another great idea. You put in an electric charger. Ours was put in free by Tesla. How great is that? They wanted to put them in because they want to spread them around, and they put it in for free. Then you're on all the databases of all the people who've got electric cars, and then people see you and they're looking of where to stay. And of course, they cross-reference their searches through whatever forum they're using, whatever platform they're using. They're cross-referencing that with the database of where they can charge their car. So if you've got a property that's great and it's eco and also has that car charger, that you're going to be up there. And we've had many, many guests who've come through those platforms. They're staying with us because we look great. It meets their criteria, but it also has a car charger. So it's you can't lose. And we know that, in the next 20, 25 years, everybody's going to be driving electric cars. The other cars are going to be banned. And so get in there, get your charger put in place, and start to brand yourself as eco-friendly. There's no shame in it. Nobody is going to criticize you for being eco-friendly, being sustainable. It can only get you kudos, and people are going to say, well done, it's a great job.
So, do you ever have to turn guests away, or is it all through your messaging that you're able to find the right guests? Because sometimes, there's probably lots of guests that will stay at a property and they just don't care about anything eco. They'll use every single bath towel and sheet. If they're staying for one day, it looks like they've been there for a week. All the toilet paper's gone. Like, how do you work with if your mission and your goal is to be more environmentally safe, but your guests have a different agenda? How do you work with that?
Of course. And, a lot of our guests haven't come to us because we are eco-friendly. They've come to us because they've liked what they've seen. They've read our 600 reviews on TripAdvisor, which, of course, tells everybody about what we like and what we do. And so they come to us primarily because they like the look of us, and eco-friendly is a little plus on top for some people. But the journey starts with the communication. Anybody who goes to our website, anybody who goes to one of our online platforms can't help but see that we're eco-friendly. We're eco-friendly with luxury. It is not one or the other, because some people can sometimes think that green is sort of a compromise and you're not going to get luxury. No way. It's eco and luxury together with no compromise. That's absolute plus. We will never do anything green that lessens the quality of the experience for the guest. That's an absolute no-no. It's not going to happen. But so when a guest is interested and they inquire in the correspondence, in the email, in the conversation, we'll be talking in a subtle and light way, of course, about our eco standards. And if they book, we will go into more detail about that. And before they arrive, they've got a really clear idea of why we're eco, why it's important to us, and what they can expect when they arrive. So to give you a couple of examples, single-use plastic. We saw, and we used to do it ourselves years ago, the amount of water we bought in plastic bottles that you then throw away. And we know of all the billions of tons of plastic in the world, still only 9% has actually ever been recycled. Most of it ends up in landfill or ends up in the ocean. It's a tragedy. So we have a ban on single-use plastic on our premises. And what that means is that we put in place filtered water for our guests. We put in place a machine in every apartment so they could make sparkling water. We give them a gift of a canister, a metal insulated thermos flask that they take away with them, that's branded with our name on, as a gift to take home, so that they have that mentality when they get back home. And before they arrive, we tell them, do not buy any water in bottles at the supermarket or on your route, whether it's still or sparkling, because we have the facility to give you that for free. It will cost you no money. And so all you need to do is go to the machine in your kitchen and it will give you fresh, clean, pure, filtered, still or sparkling water. So who's going to go and buy bottled water when they've got it there on tap for free? So those gestures are important, that we tell them about that. We tell them about the vegetable patch and the orchard and the free eggs from our free range chickens and the olive oil they're going to get from our trees as gifts in the apartment. And so that they don't need to go out and buy all these extra things and go to the supermarket and buy vegetables shrink wrapped in plastic or whatever it might be. They're small steps, but they're important steps in no way to patronize guests, but to help in their education. I'm still being educated. People are still teaching me lots of things about this subject, but in a gentle and careful and subtle way, we try to help educate our guests as well. So for instance, the toilet paper you mentioned in the bathroom comes from a company called Who Gives a Crap. You may have heard of them. They're a great company with a bit of a fun name, as you can tell. It's recycled paper, and the company give 50% of their profits to build toilet facilities in the developed world. How brilliant is that? You're buying an ethical product, and you're buying it from ethical company who are doing good in the world. So when we cottoned on to them and some of the other companies like Jerry I mentioned, they do the same with their profits. We now try, when we have a choice about where we give our money, which services we buy or which goods we buy, we'll always look for the ethical standard of that company. And if we've got two companies and they've got similar products and similar prices, we will always go with the ethical company. Because if you've got, your dollar or your euro or your pound to spend it with a company who are going to do some good. So we call it the sort of multiplier effect. Your dollar is not just gone to buy that product, whatever it might be, but some of that dollar has gone to help somebody in a developed country, or help somebody clean a beach somewhere, or help educate a child in Africa, or whatever it might be. So part of our philosophy, and it's something that a lot of people who are into eco also think about, is think beyond your realm, your business, what you're doing. Think to where you can spread that message and have an influence beyond your business. So for us, that's the businesses that we transact with. It's the guests that we come into contact with. And then particularly for me, because of my contacts through the vacation rental world, it's the education and information that I give out to my colleagues around the world, because I'm on this mission to try and get everybody to take some steps to make a difference, because it's going to be great for them. So why wouldn't they want to do it?
You made you made a distinction between luxury and eco. Typically, when people think, it's either luxury and having an abundance and everything that you need, versus eco, where you're wiping your butt with maybe with leaves. So how can you have how do you have a luxury eco friendly stay, and how can people still provide everything that people expect, like you said, without reducing the quality of the stay, but actually enhancing it?
You do it by choosing the products and the services that have quality as well as being eco. So you don't make a compromise when you purchase your water bottle or your toilet paper, or the products that we use in our cleaning materials. They come dehydrated, and you rehydrate them on site, so you're not transporting water in a bulky product. You're doing it on site, and then you're rehydrating them. And you're using the same dispenser for the hand wash or the cleaner. You don't just throw it out once you've used it once, you refill it. So these things become obvious to the guests because they're using these products, they're touching these products, they're seeing these products. They know that they're good products, that they work, they do what they're meant to do, and they give guests a great feeling. So one of the things that I'm so pleased about and humbled about is when a guest leaves, and being on site, it's wonderful. Each week 6 sets of guests go home and they say thank you. They give you a pat or hug, pre-COVID, and they are saying thank you. We've had a really amazing stay. You've helped us see that this is a great location and we want to come back. And you've helped us see a little bit into the window of being more eco-friendly. And people go home and then they email us and say, oh, we've just bought that water dispenser. Oh, we've just planted some trees. Or we've just moved to a green energy tariff. Or, the list goes on and on. And that's great because you've made a difference. You've made an impact on their lives. But you've never, ever, ever done it by compromising on luxury or on experience. They've had the same brilliant experience. They've had the same feeling of it meeting or exceeding all of their standards. But they've also gone home feeling that they have had made a small difference to the world by staying in an eco-friendly location. And they go home and we tell them what they've done. We give them an indication of the difference they've made. So they go home having had a great holiday, having met us, and we've had some good times together, hopefully. But they've gone home and made a difference, and we tell them that difference that they've made. We give them the stats, we give them the information, and it works. They come back. Most of them come back. So I guess we must be doing something right. And I'm not claiming that, we've got the secret sauce and with the recipe and it's the perfect scenario. We still do lots wrong. But if it's working most of the time, then it could work for many other people in a similar way. And I really would encourage your listeners to think about that and take some steps.
What would you do differently if you had to start from scratch?
I would have done some of the eco stuff earlier than we did. We took it gently in the early days because we were nervous and thinking about the business and thinking about what we had to do. So we were juggling a lot of balls in the early days, and we dropped a couple of those balls. And so although we had eco as one of those balls, it wasn't in any way as a priority as it is now. It was possibly a secondary element. And it should have been a first element. But we learned, and of course, I suppose 15 years ago, the conversations around eco was not as pronounced as it is now. There was the Greta Thunbergs of the world and the David Attenboroughs helping us see that we needed to make a difference. So we didn't know as much then. If we had, we would have done some of the eco stuff earlier, because it's been a joy to do. It's been great for our business, and we've met some wonderful people through the years we've been running the business. So it's only been a success for us. So I would say that.
And what question would you have for maybe someone that is at a similar size than you, or maybe that next step wherever you're trying to go, whether that's with your eco efforts or operations, whatever it is, if you could be asking them where you're trying to aspire to, what questions would those be?
Yeah, I mean, on the eco side, I would be challenging them to take some of the steps that we've talked about, and I would be explaining why I think those steps are important. I think, as I said back at the beginning, baking it into the business early on, I think, is crucial. You don't want to be seen as a greenwasher. That's really terrible, and you'll get a lot of stick for it. So if you're going to do it, you have to do it with passion and with verve and with interest. So I would certainly challenge people to take those steps. I think I would also be conscious, of course, I can speak for our community here. We live in a rural community. We're not in a city. We're not even urban. We're very rural. So we have certain challenges here that a city person wouldn't have. And I can appreciate that a city person would have challenges that we haven't come across. But I think there's an opportunity for everybody in every situation to take some steps. Those steps might be in a different order, or there might be different priorities, but they're there to be taken. And I would be trying to understand what the circumstances were of those hosts so that you could give them or encourage them to take those first few steps.
But as far as like what questions is there anything that you see somebody else doing that if you could ask them the certain questions, like how can I apply this into my business or into my life? What type of questions would you specifically have for them?
Yeah, it's a very good question. A very good question. I think I would want to understand what was working so well for them and copy it. What we've done many times is we've copied what other people have done. We've not come up with these ideas ourselves, some of them. We've looked at other people, we've looked at the market, and we've said, oh yeah, they're doing this. We could do that, And I guess maybe a lot of your listeners have the same occupational hazard that we have. Whenever we go on holiday and wherever we're staying, we can never quite switch off. We're going, why did they put that light switch there? And why is that kitchen laid out in that way? And, why do they, do this with the bathroom? And why is it you have to walk down 3 flights of stairs to access X or whatever it would be? So it's something that's hardwired into us now that we can't sort of switch off on holiday. We've still got to be thinking, could we build that into our business? Would we do that? We wouldn't do that. So, I mean, I would challenge people to to look around at their competitors. I'm sure everybody does, but look wider, look at what somebody is really doing that you think you wouldn't want to do, and challenge yourself to think, well, why are they doing it then? What is it that works for them? And why wouldn't it work for me? Because, we've looked at things in the past and said, no, we're not going to do that. And then a year down the line, we start to do it. So because we see other people doing it and it works. So I guess the same principles would apply to other hosts as well.
Who are some of those people or companies that you really model your business off of? Being in the short-term rental space, are there a lot of other short-term rental companies that are, very eco-friendly, or are you modeling based off of other industries?
No, that we do try and model mainly off people in our industry. There are other great organizations and great people doing fantastic stuff in our industry. And I'm one of the founding members of the Start Throwers, along with Matt Lando, who I think you've interviewed in the past on this podcast. And we set up a couple of years ago a business called, an organization called the Start Throwers. And through that, we try to encourage people working in our industry to find a way of giving back to their community, find the gap in their community, find something that needs fixing, and do it altruistically because it's good for your community. And that might be cleaning a beach, or it might be planting trees, or it might be saving bears, whatever the topic. Do something and talk about that, because that's great. And people love to see you doing good. Nobody ever criticized you for doing that. So we have a model that we try and roll out to people who are interested, to encourage them to do something in their community, whatever it might be, that would be really a positive. Not because it's great for your business, but because it needs doing. And I think it's beholden on each of us to take some steps to support our communities and do something that's good. And through some of those organizations that I've now connected with, I've learned stuff. I've seen the things that people are doing. And I thought, yeah, why don't we do that? So to give you one very small example, we've always had a carbon offset scheme here, where we've explained to guests, and there's information in their room guide about how they can offset their carbon for their flight, for traveling to and from us. And it's been a voluntary thing in the past that we've just let people give us a donation and we plant some trees with that money. We add our own contribution. From next year, we're going to make it, and I learned this from somebody else, we're going to make it a default. So we're going to add it to the price of their holiday. It's only going to be $10 or $20, and say, with that money, we're going to plant some trees, and that will offset the carbon for your journey. We will add our own $20 onto that, whatever the amount would be, so that you can see that we're committed to this too. If you don't want to do it, of course, we won't charge you. But by default, so this is the step that we're just taking, by default, we're going to charge you that amount. And we're going to launch it in the new year for the next season. And I would be surprised if we get more than 5% of people who'll say, I don't want to pay it. Because in the scale of things, $20 or $30 in the scale of a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 holiday is nothing. And we'll explain it, we will talk about it, we will make sure they understand why we're doing it and why it's important. But this is a step we've only taken after 14, 15 years, because we've been nervous about just imposing something on a client without their authority. But I've learned that from others that are doing it, and I've learned the impact that it can have. So yes, we can all learn from each other, and it's a journey that we're all on, and it's just a destination we're all heading towards.
Well, Bob, if anybody has any other questions, if they want to find out how they can make their own short-term rentals a little bit more eco-friendly, find out more about some of the stuff that you've learned that you can pass on to them, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
Yeah, they can connect with me via our website, casal.com. I guess you'll put a link in the show notes. They can email me there. They can contact me via LinkedIn, and there they'll find various articles that I've written on this subject. So that's also a good way to do that. Obviously, if there's any people listening who are a member of Matt Landau's Inner Circle. I do a lot of writing within the Inner Circle, so they'll see me there. And but anybody who's interested, please do get in touch. I'm not an expert, but I've made some mistakes and I've learned some lessons, so I can point you in the right direction. I'd be really happy to help anybody.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Bob, for taking the time. And until next time, Host Nation, keep on hosting. Hope you hosts benefited from the show. If you found value, please go on over to iTunes, leave us a review, and let us know what you enjoy about the show. If you'd like to talk to hosts that have been featured in these episodes as well as the community, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation.